Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Guns, brought to you by Patriot Patch Company, FFL Payments, Traditional Arms, and MAF Corporation. The show offers commentary on the latest firearms industry news, information, and buzz. I'm your host, Matthew Larosiere, and I'm joined today by the Rat Man, who has equipped his Mossberg 590 on CS Office 2.
Yeah, I'm on Summit from the great video game Call of Duty Black Ops, coming to you live with my Stakeout Ithaca shotgun.
That's all really good. Anyway, to jump ahead of it, who's this month in guns? Yeah, it's been crazy. I've been going through a move, and so with any luck, this will be the last time you guys see this particular beautiful steel gray, non-depressing, wonderful background. To those of you who are audio only listeners, this will be the only time the last time you hear me in this particular arrangement of bad acoustics. It'll be a different type of bad acoustics next time. But yeah, so again, we're sorry, but we're so thankful to those of you who've borne with us and all of you who are the Patreon supporters of either of our Patreons and have been chatting with us and kind of, staying in the loop in the interim. But here we are again in the saddle. Mr. Ivan, do you have any cool updates or anything from the past month?
Don't have any huge ones. There's another shotgun that I found out that I needed, and I bought it, and it was cheap, and it was great. I guess the big update for me, because I guess I've also been sort of a delinquent on my uploads and stuff, is I had given up on researching Japanese shotguns because I figured there just wasn't enough out there, but I made like a series of breakthroughs, and I've now learned a whole lot about the Japanese shotguns. And at this point, it's just a matter of sifting through what's there to figure out what's true. But I'm going to make a video about the history of Japanese shotguns post-World War II because it's criminally underreported, and the only one you can find anything about in the English language is really just Moroku, which most people are familiar with through Browning and Winchester. But I'm going to make this great big history of the thing nobody cares about, and it's going to make me happy.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I like I've been following you on that journey, and even I almost fell asleep with you talking about it. But I think it's cool anyway, kind of like when we do FUD blasters on a gun we really like and we get, dozens of views, but it makes us really happy. The interesting was the video on the Colt All American which it actually did pretty okay, that video, but I think the two of us were like, this is so good. This is the first time anyone's getting all this information out and everything. Everyone's like, that gun's ugly.
Yeah, it was, I think it was like a lot of rage bait views ultimately, because like the video got posted around and people were like, these guys actually like this gun. And most of our interest, I think, derived from it being a little bit reactionary, because people had said this gun was so bad, and the gun's not so bad. The gun's actually pretty okay. It's substantially better than it had any right to be. Because I
still maintain that it is good. Like,
if somebody said, like, I'm describing a gun to you, okay? So 1990s polymer frame, double stack 9mm. You're probably going, okay. And then I said, meant to be like a revolver. There's no way that's ever going to be good, right? But it's actually not bad at all.
Yeah. Have you backed off from it being good?
I do still think it's good, but I've always maintained it needs contextualized. Like in the 90s, that's good eating. But today, like if they manufacture to today, I wouldn't say rush out to buy it unless they improve by improved, I mean made the trigger more what people expect a trigger on such a thing to be like.
Right.
With that fixed, I think the ergos are great. I think it's really, despite the bore axis, pretty high bore axis, very flat shooting because of the rotating barrel. The ones I've had have had one unreliable one because it was clapped out. I think you're in the same boat. Like after a ton of rounds to the point that it's very obvious it needs parts replaced. Yeah, sure, they'll stop being very reliable, but otherwise they've just run great for me. So that with a trigger that's either shorter or uses a half-cock striker system or something, I think it's a completely competent gun.
Right. Yeah. No, I still think they're great. And super flat shooting, and I think it's because of that. I feel like how flat it is because of that revolver-esque cutout it has in the top of the grip, where you kind of get this like lock down onto the frame that you're kind of not expecting just from looking at the gun, but then when you're shooting it, it's like, well, that's really not going up at all. But anyway, another really great update is Matt Hoover is out of jail. He has been posting on Facebook, and it has been very funny. But so that was great to see. And his appeal is still pending in the 11th Circuit, and feeling pretty good about that, because the 11th Circuit, if they're going to tell you to pound sand, they tend to do it pretty quickly. So the fact that they're still sitting on it, I think is a good sign. So that's good. Oh, and we have 2 or 3 FUD Blasters videos that are edited, that just need final touches to be going out. So that's all going to be great. And I was holding off on doing until I get my new computer set up so that I can render the 1080p video in half a second. But anyway, let's get into the stories. This first one's a huge shocker. All right. If there was some nation, right, where trafficking in arms is like really difficult to do legally, would you be shocked to know that the counties in the state physically closest to it, the most populous counties that are also physically closest to this place, would have had the most guns show up there?
That's ridiculous. I would have expected them to come from a place with big gun control laws that has very few guns from far away.
Yes. No. So this is why this Reuters report has showed us the shocking revelation that Caribbean gun trafficking is tied to hubs in Florida, part of which is in the Caribbean, and Georgia, which is physically connected to Florida. So this study has, and then we have this glorious image of Haitian authorities going through these trafficked arms. And this is a Reuters article. So yeah, report by Geneva-based small arms survey links Caribbean gun trade to U.S. areas in the Southeast.
Wow. Huh.
30% of traced firearms were bought in 2 Florida counties, Miami-Dade and Broward, which are in South Florida.
The biggest, closest ones. Wow.
the big close ones. And 78% of illegal arms shipment were detected in Florida and Georgia ports, which happen to be the ports that are close to it.
Now, see, that's an interesting one, because they talk about detection.
Right.
So, okay. Not that I'm a gun trafficker, but the way I would expect this to work, right, would be, say you were flying these guns there out of, by small airplane, light aircraft, right, out of Texas, right? It's not going to get checked. They're probably not going to be checking for that. The places that they're going to check for guns that are being trafficked is in Florida and Georgia, as far as Caribbean gun trafficking, right? Mm-hmm. Florida and Georgia is going to be the places they bother to check for that. So I think that's one of those things where it's like they find guns where they look for them.
Right.
Because if these were, of all of the guns recovered in the Caribbean, they can trace 80% of them to Florida or Georgia. That's a very different statistic than
right.
When we check at the ports, 80% of the ports that we're checking at, which is just the close ones, we find them.
Yeah, the ports that are the ones the stuff would be going to, anyway. It's just so very silly goosey. But let's go here. I just also want to point out this image, right? And this is weapons and ammunition seized during different operations against gangs are presented during a press conference in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, November 28th, 2025. This article was just published on December 2. And then we look at these guns. And so are these not counting the handguns, which is, a morass of nondescript self-loaders, right? When you look at these guns, do you think immediately, crime gats? So this is just kind of wild, right? So from left to right, we've got an AR, which is, an A1 or SP1 pattern. We've got an M1 Garand. We've got another fixed carry handle AR. Then we've got two, we can't really tell what they are.
Nondescript ARs that do kind of look like you'd expect crime guns to look.
Yeah, especially with the cutoff gas block.
Yeah.
But then you got a Galil Ace, about 80% of another AR. Then you got
that's an RH10. That's the long barrel Draco.
Yep, exactly. A good eye. And then you've got the opposite 80% of another carry handle AR. Then you have a T65, which is very clearly built on one of the HK parts kits that came out of Africa.
It's not impossible that maybe it didn't come to the U.S. first and came from Africa there, because
look at the upper and lower.
Not impossible. So, they just got lowers separate, but yeah, it's like weirdly weathered, and it's very, very strange to see a T65 on an evidence table in the Caribbean.
Right, and that's because these are extraordinarily expensive. Interestingly, the Taiwanese, through a very boring system of factors that I won't get into right now, but they tend to cut up their guns, and so it's very rare to see Taiwanese surplus. And yet, here it is. I suspect that this was, a HK parts kit that was bought and then assembled onto a, random lower.
Could have been stolen.
Or that.
Like somebody had one of these in the US and got it stolen. Or, hang on, these being shipped around as parts kits, it may have been a package that went missing.
That's true. And then as we go to the right, we've got another AK. This is kind of like more crime adjacent.
Yes, it's a crime loadout.
Another carry handle AR, and then finally,
it's a Beretta AL2. So it's some sort of 300 series. My guess would be an AL2, maybe in 20 gauge. At least just judging off of the dimensions that I can see, maybe a 20 gauge.
That's an air rifle, and then of course a Barrett. And so the question here is, what is actually going on here, right? Because there's too much weird guns going on there for this to be like normal trafficking stuff.
Right. Like, so any of those carry handle ARs here in the US are worth a pretty decent amount of money. And it's not the sort of thing that would make sense to smuggle.
So out of 9 ARs that you have up here, 2 are, the
$400 pawn shop specials. The rest of them, like, even beat up SP1s these days are going for like $1,000. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, this just doesn't make sense. So to me, it's like, at least with this image, was this like some Haitian like gang guy that like had the type of autism that's compatible with ours? And also just one thing I'd like to point out is on this table, you have the AR-15 from all those Associated Press articles where they, the M16A1 with the carbine stock. It's here. It was in Haiti. But yeah, organized crime in the Caribbean is being fueled by arms trafficking that can be traced largely to a handful of areas in the U.S. states of Florida and Georgia. This is so intensely disingenuous. Like, it's insane. So
I don't doubt that they get most of their guns from the US, but then like their big story is that a lot of guns that are close to the Caribbean theater, if you will, get seized at the ports that are closest to the Caribbean theater.
Right.
Very, very shocking.
Yeah, so it makes no sense. This is one of those conclusions in search of a problem, right? So I just thought it would be, I don't know, just wanted to show that one to you guys.
I just thought the evidence table made it worth talking about because it's kind of cool.
I agree. I wanted to talk about the T65. I really like the T65. Next thing I want to talk about is the Trump administration has both sides of its mouth running right now. So we've got it, coming up in a few weeks. We've got the $0 SBR and surpriser stuff coming up. But at the same time, the DOJ is aggressively defending the NFA's application in tax challenge cases, right, which we've talked about before, but then also other cases contesting the Second Amendment appropriateness of the barrel length restrictions, including the case that we're litigating here in Florida. An article from the Independent Institute. U.S. Defense National Firearms Act restrictions lacking a tax nexus. And this kind of goes through what we're talking about. As I previously explained, in the zero tax on NFA firearms, serious constitutional issues arise about the constitutional validity of the registration and other requirements of the NFA as to firearms that now have a $0 tax. Short-barreled shotguns, SBRs, silencers, and any other weapons, which they call AOLs in this article, which is, I think that might, machine guns and DDs remain subject to the $200 tax. So they talk about those challenges that are pending, which are specifically on the tax nexus question, which I think is really interesting. And the government is arguing forcefully on the tax power and on all this other stuff. But then we've also got in the Colin case, which we initially brought from the pistol brace perspective. Well, there was still a question of constitutionality because we challenged the NFA's application to firearms based on barrel length, and the government has submitted this, full-throated brief where they argue a lot of things, and there's some pretty problematic internal inconsistencies where they straight up say, oh, well, you have no standing to bring a Second Amendment challenge. And it's so obvious that these people have no standing to bring a Second Amendment challenge. And then they proceed to spend the next 3 pages explaining why the people who very obviously have standing don't actually have standing, and don't look at them. Ignore the affidavits, please. And then they say binding precedent precludes this challenge. And then they cite non-binding authority. So it's just really interesting how they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. Oh, and on top of that, oh, well, we backed off of the rule, so it's moot. There's no enforcement challenge, despite literally one of the most recent filings prior to this, the government saying, well, no, these firearms have always been subject to the NFA and always will be, no matter what, forever and ever, amen. So I just don't get it. They do have the option of saying, there might be something to this.
Right. And that was the thing that I really wanted to hammer on with this, is that, especially in response to the tax cases, right? Mm-hmm. Once the DOJ took the position that, they invoke Filburn, and it's not a popular case for a variety of reasons, but specifically invoking it here,
right?
Where they're trying to hang their hat on a $0 tax,
right?
It's fascinating. And so rightfully, a lot of gun rights groups and people got agitated by this. And of course, you sort of had your usual clickbait, like DOJ says the NFA is 100% constitutional. Well, people get up in arms on that because they figured that now the DOJ is saying that about NFA stuff, and spoiler alert, of course they're going to say that about the Second Amendment NFA angle. But specific to the tax and spend angle, people were upset, and DOJ had its spokespeople and its talking heads take to Twitter to say, don't get mad at us. Congress is the one that passed the law. Don't get mad at us. You can't get mad at us about this. We have to defend this law. And then people started producing the receipts of the times that this specific DOJ, even in the Second Amendment context, has looked at a law and went, yeah, we're not defending that. That's ridiculous. We can't defend that. It's not defensible. So DOJ was like, I don't know, I guess doing damage control, trying to say, well, we've been the most pro Second Amendment DOJ that's ever existed. And The problem is that's probably true.
Yeah, no, it's like that's like you kick the least cats at the cat kicking competition.
Right. And I had made an analogy on Twitter, sort of like reacting to this, because of course, I was one of these people upset where it's like, hey, you're gaslighting people and that sucks. Right. But they're saying that because they've tapped the brakes, it doesn't matter that they still have the accelerator flat on the floor. You need to stop the bad things you're doing, sure, but maybe you also need to start doing good things. And you could do both at once by changing your position on, at least with respect to the barrel length, right? Because as far as Congress has indicated what Congress is going to indicate, they don't want the SBRs and short-barreled shotguns and suppressors on the NFA anymore.
Right.
Of course, we covered the whole weird way in which that ended up unfolding, why it's now $0 and they still have to register it for $0, which is ridiculous and makes me roll my eyes.
Right.
But DOJ trying to gaslight, I think gaslight's the best way to describe it. Like trying to gaslight, we can't take the position that's how that the NFA is unconstitutional, or that this isn't a valid tax. You have to talk to Congress about that one. When DOJ does have the ability, and they have demonstrated they have this ability, right, and they've gone to bat to defend the idea that they have this ability to say, no, this law isn't constitutional, or no, this application, or no, this understanding isn't correct, and this needs to be reversed.
Yeah.
Additionally, and we've talked about this before, you and I are of the same mind that we don't think that this is necessarily valid, but the DOJ has gone and settled questions of interpretation of these sorts of things already, which I guess it's not them taking the position that the law doesn't apply, but it's them taking the position that I don't think we're going to win this, or there's a good chance we don't win this, so we'll settle. So it's frankly just silly to me. And I know the counter reaction, right? The people saying, well, you don't want the DOJ doing this now because when there's a Democrat DOJ back in control, they'll also be very disingenuous, or they'll flip-flop and change their mind. And I would like to refer everybody to the fact that that's exactly what we had with Biden, right? They have no problem doing that with Biden. The DOJ went and looked at opinions ATF had published for like 10, 15 years and reversed them, changed their mind. Just kidding. Yeah. Actually, they were always SBRs. So to the extent that people are worried about, but once the shoe's on the other foot, once the other shoe drops, right, it's going to be really bad. We've already seen what it's like. It is bad. We shouldn't bind ourselves to rules that the other side's not going to hold themselves to. This DOJ shouldn't gaslight people. It should take the position that it ought to take, right? That at the very least, the barrel length stuff and the suppressors shouldn't be on the NFA. But that's all wishful thinking. I'm happy to take what we can get, but we probably ought to be getting more than lip service when it comes to this particular category of hardware ban, right? The NFA is outdated. It's antiquated to the extent that it was ever quote unquote useful in the first place. It's certainly not anymore, because the trend of militia or militarily useful, again, this DOJ has taken the position in hardware ban cases dealing with AR-15s or magazines that the Second Amendment is about martial effectiveness, defending yourself, sure, target shooting, sure, but the primary use is being able to hold off equally armed forces, be they from this government or another. They've taken this position, and it's the historically defensible one. But then they're going to sit there and tell you have no need to have suppressors or short rifles or short shotguns, despite the fact that the unmistakable trend since 1934 has been in the direction of, right, World War II happens, they start using some suppressors, Vietnam, there's more suppressors. These days our military wants all of our soldiers, right? The whole push with the M7 is everyone will have a gun with a suppressor. Also, that gun's going to be a short-barreled rifle. Also,
same with the barrel length since 1917.
Yep.
And it's only gotten shorter.
The M7 has a shorter barrel than the M4, and now the Army is looking at adopting a carbine version of their sub-carbine length barrel. So there has been a very clear direction this stuff goes, and it's shorter and more compact firearms as the technology and ammunition and the guns themselves gets better. So it's disingenuous. It's beyond gaslighting. It's maybe even it's like a smack in the face for them to say this is what the Second Amendment's about, but don't you dare think that you're entitled to have that.
Yeah, no, it's and just the arguments that they're making in court is so one hand not watching the other. It's outrageous. Like literally dangerous and unusual. They're saying these things are dangerous and unusual, despite the fact that by their own admission, there's like millions of them. It's
like the Second Amendment is for you to have militarily relevant firearms,
but not that one.
But if they're dangerous, right? And we're going to define dangerous as what somebody thought in 1934 that might have meant. Right.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
And of course, then you get into the legislative history, right? And we've talked about this before. The history of 1934 tells you the barrel length restrictions was about handguns.
Mm-hmm.
So, like in 1934, they thought that these short-barreled rifles and shotguns would be dangerous because they're like handguns.
People are just gonna avoid the handgun registration because that's why it was put in,
right?
By just cutting down their riffles. So we got to do something about that.
And then you fast forward to the only time the Supreme Court has clearly articulated anything with regard to the Second Amendment. And this has been something that even the anti-gunners have respected for the most part, is this question of possession of handguns in the home, right? Heller made it pretty clear you can't really mess with that. And a couple of states have purchase permits, and then California had its roster, right? But the roster was for the most part defanged because the microstamping thing went away, and we'll have to see how that continues to unfold. But even the anti-gunners they respect that more than they've respected anything else the Supreme Court has ever said with regard to the Second Amendment. But now the DOJ is going to take the contradictory position of Second Amendment is about militarily useful arms, but you can't have dangerous, unusual ones like those handguns, except for the handguns that you can have and we encourage you to have. But of course.
Right. Totally wild. Anyway, let's talk about good news that the Associated Press finds a way to, like, there's a way to look through this prism, right? If the prism is mass killings are down like dramatically, there has to be a way to make it, oh yes, this is likely just a return to more typical levels. So this is an AP article. Again, and of course, what do you lead with? The blood leads, invoking a children at a birthday party, right? Shooting. But yeah, 17th mass killing this year, the lowest number recorded since 2006, according to their own database. Why can't there ever be good news? Like, at all. And immediately going next. Experts warn that the drop doesn't necessarily mean safer days are here to stay, that it could simply represent a return to average levels. Sir Isaac Newton never studied crime, but he says what goes up must come down. That's brilliant. It's like brilliant policy level analysis there. Is that there's actually like a big tube of violence, and if you squeeze it, it has to go up somewhere else because the violence has to go somewhere. But here's the real thing, right? So it's a like incredibly low number, but we're dealing with the law of small numbers, right? Changes in the single digit level when something never happens are dramatic changes. No, I'm not saying it never happens as in like denial, right? But I mean, statistically speaking, right? Where you have a 1 in, 11.6 million chance of ever being subject to one of these. It's not a very common thing. So I guess I just wanted to put in there as one, it's an interesting data point to know that they are down so much. I always like to kind of like pontificate as to why, but I can't even think of a reason.
I think the law of small numbers just explains it best, where like the relative chance of a person doing something as awful of this is already low. And then the chance of them being successful then filters that out even further. And then the chance of having enough of those coincide within one calendar year that they look at, filters it down to you can have pretty dramatic spikes in terms of percentage, but the actual number you're looking at is 5 of them is a 25% increase or something.
Yeah.
So it's I guess just one of those interesting things. I guess the more ironic maybe note that I would like to interject is that when Bruin decision dropped, right? What did the anti-gunners tell us? First off, they told us it was wrong. Second off, they told us that the streets would be awash in blood because so many people would carry guns.
Yes.
Baltimore had to let people concealed carry. Baltimore saw a dramatic drop in the number of homicides and violent crime.
No.
And I just think it's funny. Like at least a couple of data points that you can pick out that violent crime went down in a lot of these big cities. And of course, the Bruin decision coincided with the sort of tailing end of the COVID and summer of peace and these sorts of things. So of course that certainly did play a role, but to the extent the anti-gunners were the sky is falling, everything's over because people can have their guns now. We then see 2025 continue a trend of a decline in the number of mass shootings, which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Maybe it's because the Gen Zers just like they're too socially like shooken up. They have too much social anxiety than to go out and encounter all those people. But God, I feel myself aging rapidly as I say that. I did. I remember how annoyed I used to get when people would be like, "It's the millennials. They can't call you on the phone." But anyway, to me the biggest part about that thing was just how like ridiculously insincere people have to be whenever they talk about gun policy.
Yeah,
it has to be bleeding.
Decline of mass murders isn't good. It's actually bad, and it's bad because it could go back up.
Yeah, we're just squeezing the tube, so it's going to be huge. It's the Newton's law.
Guys, something bad could happen in the future.
Yeah.
Therefore, what happens good now is not.
It's simple. Next up, this is interesting. So the proposed ATF final rule would simplify interstate transport of some NFA items. So this is basically, Ivan, what do we got here? This is just an E-form 20.
So the way that the way the things regulations currently shake out is that when you have an NFA item, right, you have it registered to you, but it's registered in your state, and you are supposed to fill out a form if you intend to take it to any other state. Now, of course, this is, I guess the thought there is that when this all became a thing, people weren't taking a lot of NFA stuff interstate.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be able to track it. Like if you moved or if you were caught in another state with it, they wanted to make sure there wasn't some sort of weird trafficking nonsense going on.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the intent behind it. But of course, you progress to the point that NFA items are commonplace and a lot of gun owners have them. And of course, gun owners found ways to gamify it where if you're that worried about it, you fill out the form and say that I will be taking my gun to every state in the country for lawful purposes at some point in the next calendar year. And then you'd just be good, right? And you'd be covered. No. The ATF would routinely approve permits filled out this way. And when they're approving permits filled out that way, what that actually means is they don't give a shit about the data that they're getting out of things. The data just doesn't matter to them.
Yep.
And so, of course, this was one of those permits that ATF had not made a electronic version of.
Right.
And so the big change here is that ATF is going to make an electronic version of it. And ATF has been doing a series of updates to their website, the eForms website, where it
which they broke recently. Yeah.
Yes, they did break recently, but they've been making a lot of changes where you can autofill information much quicker. So if you're somebody that's like a habitual form filler outer,
right.
Like the oldest version of the website that I had ever used, you were punching in all your information every time, and there was like 5 to 10 minutes every form you fill out. You're just wasting time. That is like, obviously, I, the user of this account, am going to be filling it out with my name.
Yeah.
It would be weird if I was signing for someone else.
Yeah.
But, I guess it's cool to see, right? And Biden's ATF did a lot of horrible stuff, right? But one thing that having a permanent director, and Dettelbach was in charge of a lot of that horrible stuff. But one thing that we can credit Dettelbach for is that because he was a permanent director, he was able to push some things through at ATF that they had wanted to do for a while. One of those being right the streamlining of forms.
Yep, of processing.
I'm young enough to remember whenever it took 1.5 years to get a suppressor or 1.5 years to get a short-barreled rifle transferred, and then it went down to a couple of weeks. And the only thing they changed is they computerized it and made it so it wasn't like a stupid queue, right? Where if somebody had a problem with their form,
it held up everyone else.
Examiners wait and wait and wait and wait, and they wouldn't just move to the next person while the form got figured out. So making it so that the drones had updated programming helped things move along much quicker. But Dettelbach was responsible for that, and it is exciting that the ATF does not yet have a new permanent director. I guess that's one story we didn't include, is that Trump has maybe tapped a guy. We'll have to see. And this whole Senate confirmation, I'm sure, will be a disaster, as it always is with these sorts of things. But it'll be very fun to watch. Hopefully, if appointed, he turns out to be an okay dude. But it's cool to see, even with Dettelbach out, the ATF is still committed to maybe uncrapping some of the crappy ways in which it has operated with regards to there's no reason the forms shouldn't be e-forms. I guess another little update for the SOTs out there, right, is your SOT paperwork can all be done online now. You can even pay your SOT fees without mailing them a check, or as they suggest, cash in an envelope, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
You can do that with an electronic envelope now.
An envelope, if you will. But yeah, it's so basically the main thing here, and just to put a sum on it, is previously, and the wildest thing is that you had to like the way it's written, you had to get approval beforehand to move your stuff. And now and so you'd have to mail out and duplicate this thing to this PO box and then wait, and it would take weeks to get back, because I remember I've done it. But now they just you can do it on e-forms. So have they gotten rid of this stupid process? No, but they're gonna let you e-forms it. And I do think that since they really don't give a shit about it, there's no reason that shouldn't just be basically automatically approved.
Right. Because it's one of those things where I cannot think of a possible way that you could use this in a nefarious manner.
Right.
Like, they're just asking you to tell on yourself, right? So, okay, I'm telling on myself I might take my SBR to another state or whatever. ATF's not going to catch anybody in a way that lets them hurt people if they don't fill it out. And if you do fill it out, it's just like good boy points, right? It's like, thanks for letting us know, I guess. Frankly, I think that to the extent the system exists, it should be like removing an NFA item where you just have to write them and say, hey, I might be taking this to another state. If you're worried about it maybe getting stolen or something, or maybe if you're shipping it interstate, so you won't be there holding it physically. You're shipping it to yourself in another state, like people do for some matches or whatever. Maybe then it would matter, but I don't know. It's a vestige. It's a vestige of an even more silly time. Yeah,
it's true. You know what else is a vestige of an even more silly time? Somehow, traditional arms holsters. Don't have a good segue for that, guys. But traditional arms holsters and gear made in Florida. Very good stuff. Available for sale, and if you use promotional code FUDBusters or Ratman, you'll get yourself a discount. So go check out Traditional Arms holsters and gear. Give them a purchase the item from them.
And they got sauce.
Oh, they got the Stay Put sauce. It's a Loctite in a tube. Don't tell them the secret. Stay Put sauce. Oh, this is a good one. This one's in here. I put this in here just for you, Ivan. Look. America's toughest shotgun. It's got another Army contract. Look at it. Look at how cool it is. Isn't that a cool shotgun? It's the Mossberg 590 A1B2 tactical with bayonet and rifle sights.
Go back up to the top picture. Of course, this is probably just whoever threw it together from stock images. Yeah. It's a different shotgun. It's okay. It's not a problem. I guess the relevant news here, right, is that there's a picture, a screenshot that gets posted on Twitter once every couple of months of a guy saying that the shotgun was not designed for war and the AR-15 was designed for war. And
wait, hold on. Isn't them saying the opposite?
No, the guy is saying the shotgun was not designed for war. The AR-15 was designed for war. And people will post this screenshot saying, look at how dumb this guy is.
Right.
The problem is if you go and chase these things down.
Trench gun.
If you go and chase these things down and look at what you understand the English language, right? You know that the sort of means inception, or the first, or one of these sorts of things.
Right.
The shotgun was for shooting at birds. It was sort of derived from the musket. Muskets existed. People had tried to shoot birds, and people had put multiple projectiles through muskets before, certainly. But muskets were not very good at shooting birds, and so they divined a new class of firearm known as the fowling piece, which was similar to a musket, but specifically tailored to be better at shooting birds. And at first, they were very much just muskets that were lightened in some regards, but give it 150, 200 years of development, and you had the genesis of what would become the first shotguns, where they're lighter weight. The consideration for them is shooting moving targets more so than static targets. And while you can put single, solid projectiles through them, they are not optimized for the use of these things.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the military development of musket shifts pretty much universally in favor of stabilizing them through spin, the development of rifles, the mass adoption of them, and eventually cartridges and these sorts of things. Shotguns follow the cartridge development, certainly, but they've sort of forked into a separate family, right? So
they follow the cartridge development and then put the brakes on in 1890,
right?
And we're like, we're done. Aside from, of course, wad and stuff development, but really the core chambering, aside from length, hasn't really changed since the 1890s.
And a lot of that comes to the fact that when it comes to shotgun development, the fowling pieces had gauges figured out, and of course it wasn't. They had more gauges than we had today. Like 15 gauge was a big thing in France for a long time, with your muzzle loading fowling pieces. But the important thing there being the British were huge on fowling pieces. In fact, frequently credited with being that they were not the first to make them, but are credited with being the ones that made them very popular. English aristocracy wanted to shoot birds, but the English would measure the bores of their muskets an inch and their fowling pieces in gauge. And that's one sort of like aha is, they certainly saw these things very differently,
right?
And built them differently. The thought and labor and process behind making them was very different. Muskets were meant to be dime a dozen, especially back then. Fowling pieces cost what a peasant would make in a year at the very least. And I'd recently watched a documentary on a lot of the early British gun makers, and if you go back before like the London era, so into the true era of fowling pieces and aristocracy, most of these gun makers will only be in business for a couple of years, and it's because the aristocrats won't pay for the guns. They'll take the guns, they'll shoot them, they'll say good things about them, and they'll never pay their bills because they're aristocrats and they don't care, and they don't realize how expensive it is to actually make these things. But anyway, all that long-winded aside, shotguns have a common ancestor in the fowling piece and were designed for hunting. And people will point to World War I, right? Like, oh, but shotguns, World War I trench broom. The problem being most of the shotguns the U.S. sent over there were used for POW guards or guarding arms or ammo depots or warehouses. They were not used for frontline combat. To the extent they were used for frontline combat, the reviews of them weren't very good. No. And all of the shotgun designs that the U.S. sent over there in World War I, all of them were originally designed as sporting arms, and they put a heat shield on it and sometimes a bayonet mount and said, aha, here's your shotgun. Because, of course, nobody had thought to design a martial shotgun because shotguns had been relatively divorced of martial purposes forever, I guess as far back as you want to trace it, until there weren't distinct, designed from the ground up to be firing loose projectiles designs.
Right.
So, all just kind of silly there. And of course, eventually you do get purpose-designed shotgun, perfect combat purpose-designed shotguns. The 590A1 would be an example of this. But what is the 590A1? It's a heat shield and a bayonet mount. Yeah. They put on a shotgun that was meant for sporting. And of course, it's got police and defensive versions too. I know this, but it was designed for sporting because that's kind of where shotguns.
No, but they're good at martial stuff, right? Because
what if I have to breach a door? I breach doors all the time. I
need to use this. Guy. I need to use this device that's very bad at breaching doors.
to breach the doors.
Breach the door. And me being military guy, there's no other way that I could do that in a much more
very unlikely.
Yeah. So that's Yeah, that's
do shotguns have martial purpose? Yes, I mean I think it's true that they do, but
well, like so can peanut butter. Anything can have a martial purpose. If, like you can intend whatever you want, but they're not
very good at it. And the best proof of this is there's very few militaries that employ them. To the extent that they've become relevant again, it's because everybody's worried about shooting down FPV drones.
And they don't understand the best way to do that.
and they're like putting red dots on guns that aren't set up to swing and track a moving target. They're very much taking shotguns meant for shooting people and putting a red dot on it and going, money, please.
Yeah.
And militaries buy this because nobody has really, from the ground up, designed a shotgun for this purpose. Maybe we'll see that eventually. I think that would be cool. But I think if you were to like, not A/B test this, but if you were to put this in the hands of skilled shooters and unskilled shooters when it came to shooting moving targets, I think you'd find that over the past 450 years of development at this point, that they found out a formula that makes a gun really easy to shoot at moving targets, and it's not covered in Picatinny rails. That is.
Listen, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. This award reflects our long commitment to supplying rugged, mission-capable firearms built to exacting standards, and reinforces our pledge to provide timely solutions that support the safety and effectiveness of U.S. service members. All of those were words.
It's a lot of good buzzwords.
Devoid of meaning. Yeah, so that's whatever. Let's move on now. Oh, yeah, some rage bait. Speaking of the Brits, 13 weeks of hell. Man arrested in the United Kingdom for posting shotgun photo from Florida trip to LinkedIn. And you see this, like, quintessentially...
It should be illegal to post that picture. I'm 100% with the UK on this one. Clap that man in irons and send him to the tower.
Yeah, that is the most British-looking man holding a shotgun. Like this, I feel like if you asked any AI to generate British man holding shotgun in Florida, it would make this image with that and complete with swamp. But yeah, in Bradford, England, a 50-year-old IT consultant says he was put through 13 weeks of hell after British police arrested him for posting a photo of himself holding a firearm during a holiday in Florida. Also, like, who posts images on LinkedIn? That's another crime, right? But yeah, he posted it on LinkedIn while visiting a private homestead in Florida where he posed with a shotgun. Yeah, I don't think he'd be enjoying shooting it like that. Post was reportedly non-threatening and accompanied by a reflection on his work and activities. Despite the photo being taken illegally in the U.S., British authorities launched a criminal investigation that would lead to multiple arrests and charges, all of which were eventually dropped. They first visited his home to express concerns over the image and warned him how his posts might make others feel. Claims he offered to verify that the firearm in the photo was, the photo was taken in the U.S., but officers told him that wasn't necessary. 11 days later, they came back and arrested him. And the bail document listed the allegations as possessing a firearm with intent to cause fear of violence, and a separate stalking allegation tied to a photograph of a house that was posted online. You can't do that in England either. Yeah, so it's real country, very, very real.
Yeah, it is, and it's actually kind of horrible that they've done this to him, even though this is one of those stories where it makes there will come a time when AI makes all of the quote unquote news, and you'll never know what's real and what's fake anymore. And we will think back to the merry times where it would not be possible for an AI to make up this story and have that be the picture. Right? This is the picture that got the guy, because an AI will always have this dude like in a trench coat with the gun pointed at a camera, like acting all tough. He's got the skeletons on his shirt. Like that's the picture that would get you arrested in the UK in the eyes of AI. It would not be the guy at a sporting clays course pointing the gun out in a safe direction over the water clearly having no idea how he's holding it, and I'm sure
Yeah.
having the best time of his life.
Yeah, enjoying doing something. That's
I guess the freaky part about it though is that it seems that the British police even ended up agreeing that there wasn't like any stalking or threatening going on with him posting this, because they've dropped everything against him.
Yeah,
it's such a real country, I guess, is the I think you put it well. It's like this is a very real country. It's got very serious laws, and it's very interested in justice and equity, where someone else feeling threatened by a picture that you had taken in America can get the cops to arrest you.
Yeah. This guy was in Florida holding a gun. I am threatened. Yeah, that's
it just seems like maybe the intent there is they just want to like British police on high. I guess maybe their society just wants to discourage owning a firearm in general, right? And I guess that's where you end up, where people's only exposure to guns is through the media, where like we think about America, right? Like Obama was like the head honcho anti-gun politician, or Obama, right? Everybody hates him, right? He was comfortable being photographed shooting a shotgun in the famous picture, whatever. He had a Satori, and it's like, wow, he's a real American guy shooting a Japanese shotgun made by a company that used to be American, is now owned by a company that owns a Belgian company that used to own Browning. Very American gun there. But the Brits are so far along that even shotguns at a sporting clays course is like, holy shit, this guy's a fucking wacko. He's a threat to himself and others. He's doing the things that the rabidly anti-gun politicians in America are comfortable doing.
Even like, even like the more modern Democrats, right, are still doing it. It's, that's kind of like, because, well, they treat it as look, see, I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I birdshot, right?
Yeah, I shot Tim. That's yes, your old Tim Walz there is.
Yeah, Tim Walz. But yeah, and it's like, well, especially speaking of a state like Florida, it's MAF Corporation, guys. MAF-arms.com. There's all kinds of good stuff. There's sales. Go on the website, peruse the wares. There's reloading dies for the 11mm 1873 French Ordnance revolver. There's also reloading dies for 9x25 Dillon. And the NIG 211 AK BB gun. There's all kinds of stuff available. Rattler Innovation stencils, Trash Panda kits. Whoa, Hitchhiker build kit on sale, $4,999. That's crazy, guys. Go on there and be sure to use promotional code FUDBusters or RATMAN. Get yourself a sizable discount on these already unreasonably low prices. It's MAF-arms.com. Next up, more frustration for you, my darlings. The Ninth Circuit has revived California law requiring background checks for ammunition purchases, because the Ninth Circuit has never seen a gun law that could possibly constitutional or unconstitutional. But yeah, 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled 2-1 in July that the law, which the state's voters approved in 2016, interfered with the Second Amendment. And then the en banc court came and said, bonk, and said, no, actually, ammunition, you don't need it. You don't need to do that. And it doesn't matter what the text and history, because what if? And so they stopped the injunction and have revived it, because of course they did. Why wouldn't they?
Right. And we talked about it before, but the plaintiff in this case is Kim Rhodey, and I say it every time that she's cool and she shoots shotguns really, really well.
Yeah.
She's won a bunch of Olympic stuff, but she was a really good plaintiff for this because, being a shooter who shoots on the international scene, this California law makes it so that if she wants to bring ammo back with her, it has to ship through an FFL. Yeah. Now the FFL is now exposed to liability, and the FFL's now got to run a background check on top of that. So they've got paperwork, and that paperwork involves paying an employee to do it, and now they have to cover their own liability, and if they fuck something up, they've got problems legally with the state. So bringing ammo back to California with you is now an expensive endeavor. Just the entire thing's ridiculous. I think Kim Rody is a perfect plaintiff to exemplify how just idiotic this law is, as though California already wasn't enough of a hellhole to get ammunition in, because they place a separate excise tax on top of on top of the excise taxes that already exist for ammunition at even just a federal level. California separately taxes it. I think it's silly, and I think if we had a cool federal government, what they do is make it so no states could put any sort of, the federal government can tax it for import purposes, maybe because that's just sort of the way the country's always worked. But I think the federal government should say, you can't tax guns for sale, or sales tax or property tax or anything like that for any state can levy against firearms or ammunition or their accoutrement. I think that'd be funny.
Wouldn't it be crazy if they distilled that down to a simple principle, right? That was to be applied to bind the hands of the government. The first bind the hands of the federal government, and then after a bit of a war, they articulated this principle against the state governments too. So how would we write that?
I would say that we'd write it in the form that the way that it would come first is it's relatively important for individuals to be able to shoot and have a nice time. Therefore,
such as for
having a big sports hunt, including of the feral hogs.
Yes.
Therefore, and notwithstanding, it is of the utmost importance that these dogs be able to have Dracos and straps
and bark them
and bark them real loud.
Provided
they ain't use the sights and they shoot the roof. Amen.
Provided they are either very small or very large.
Yes.
No medium.
Guns in the middle of the wrong.
No.
Don't be silly. Don't be silly.
Yeah. All right. So next up, more rage bait, guys. This is just really quick. It's about Rep. Ilhan Omar pushes for federal gun registry and nationwide buyback. Usually we don't talk about this type of stuff, but I just think this
is just the eye-rollingly oh wow, an idiot said something dumb, and tomorrow morning the sun will rise and there might be a cloud in the sky that crosses across the sky.
But this quote is just so solid. I would like to read it to you. This is during recent remarks captured on video. Ilhan Omar discussed her support for a national firearms registry and federal buyback program. In the clip, Omar said, "We have more guns in this country than we have people, or than we have humans. So one of the things that is going to be important is to create a registry so we know where the guns are. We know when they go into the wrong hands, when they're stolen, and we can actually start a buyback program. I know that some of the Minnesota legislators have had that legislation, and that's something that we should be thinking about on a federal level." And the important thing to point out here that this is really good is that, if there's more guns than people, that's a big number, but it should be no big deal because we do have a federal registry of all the people.
Yeah, right? We know exactly how many people are in the country and exactly where all of them live, right?
Yeah, which is why the census goes to everyone's house.
Yes, because they already know that, and they're just checking. They're just making sure they got it right.
Yeah.
It's just beyond ridiculous, especially with Ilhan Omar being an immigrant and being outspokenly in favor of illegal immigrants being able to continue to stay here.
Right.
This country doesn't know, and has historically, at least in recent years, done a very bad job of knowing who's here and how many people are here. And people
only have the vaguest idea of how many people are here.
People overstay their visas constantly, right? It's a frequent problem, right?
Everyone talks about the Mexican border, but the single largest source of illegal immigration is airports. They just
people come here. Some people just come here and don't leave. Yeah. So we really don't have a great idea of this. And to the extent that the U.S. government tries to keep a people registry in the first place, it doesn't work very well, and B, keeping track of how many people are here is a much, much easier job than the number of firearms, because at least for tracking the number of people, everybody that's born here has got a social security number here. You got an idea. You've at least got an inkling, right? A suspicion of where they should be at, somewhere to start looking. With firearms, prior to 68, you don't have that at all. And really, by the time the gun's 5 to 10 years old, or in the case that FFL went out of business, you got no idea. You couldn't even begin to guess. And just the way the numbers work out, right? Say that you could have enough ATF drones that they can be processing one firearm registration a minute. They couldn't, especially because of the way this bottleneck would end up working out. Right. They couldn't, but say it's one a minute. It's going to take them decades. It's going to take them decades to register all the guns that are here. Assume that they could do it for as cheap as, I don't know, $25. And again, everybody understands how the government works. They could not be doing it so efficiently. It's going to be more than $25 a gun. It's going to be an order, probably $250 a gun in actual practice. But even if it was just $25 a gun, there's in excess of 400 million guns here that aren't registered. I'll let you guys do the math. It's a lot of money. It's a whole lot of money. I don't know where we think this is going to come from, but so it's economically ridiculous. And
we'll just increase the import tariff.
There we go. That's how you pull money out of a hat. There's no way that will end up coming out of some other end. You can just create doing this.
No,
but it's awesome. It's silly. It's a silly person being silly, and of course her quote there at the end it was gold to me, that we should really start thinking about a federal registry. Yeah, I agree. We should think about it and then go, ha, 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 ha. Well, that ship sailed 250 years ago.
That was stupid. Yeah, we should stop fostering all of these intrusive thoughts.
Or how about think about cars? Cars are supposed to be registered. There's supposed to be a record of these things. Cars that get stolen, very, very frequently hard to recover. When cars are destroyed, it's not like anybody says anything about it. When cars change hands, if people bother to get them retitled, sure, but especially sales across state lines, it doesn't always happen.
Yep. It's hard to track things where they are, which is almost why, tech companies spend millions and millions of dollars coming up with ways to do it. Be that as it may, FFLpaymentprocessing.com makes it easy for you as a business in this field or whatever to accept credit card payments without any fuss or muss, guys. So go to FFLpaymentprocessing.com, get yourself set up with good rates, be able to take cards without dealing with any nonsense, okay? FFLpaymentprocessing.com, tell them we sent you. Next up, this is this is like, okay. The U.S. Justice Department they're gonna do a gun rights office within the civil rights unit. Isn't this so great? So finally they're gonna these people who are arguing that the NFA is constitutional and we should still be locked in cages, they're gonna have a gun rights unit.
This is certainly one of those that it sounds a whole lot more interesting than it probably will be. Yeah. I imagine the reason this is being done is that part of this DOJ being, I guess, the most pro 2A DOJ ever, as bad as that tastes whenever you say it out loud.
Right.
As a part of that, they have had their civil rights division sue a couple of localities for violating residents' Second Amendment rights. Wickedly cool to see that happening, and I want a whole lot more of that energy. And before somebody says, but what about when the shoe's on the other foot? Biden's DOJ never gave a shit, right? They engaged in this rampantly anyway. To the extent that the government has discretionary power at the executive level, it's not even like it's a use it or lose it thing. It's a use it or lose.
Right.
Just period.
Yep. But yeah, so obviously the real purpose of this is they're not going to be attacking themselves, even though it's funny when the snake bites its tail. They're going to be going after state and local laws, which, hey, welcome it. There's plenty to eat. Trust me, there's plenty to eat.
the creation, I guess, the formation of a separate division for this, right? Where they're like, they have their Second Amendment rights division or whatever. It at least signifies maybe A, seriousness, and then B, legitimacy. Whenever they whenever they see send Harmeet Dillon out to do oral arguments or something, it can be like, and I come from the Second Amendment division at DOJ Civil Rights. Like, okay, it's a little bit more official. And I'm sure as far as government bureaucracy goes, they need to be keeping track of what money they're spending on what, and so they need it to be better organized. So I'm sure that's the reason it happened. I saw some people saying, like, does this mean NFA is finally kill? And no.
Yeah, this is, by the way, this is called the Second Amendment Rights Section.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Very big name. Next up, some good news. Florida lawmakers have advanced a bill that would repeal the Florida 18 to 21 ban after the 11th Circuit pooed their pants very hard on it twice.
That was so weird.
Yeah, that was really utterly strange. But yeah, the Judiciary Committee, because the Florida House kind of works similar to the way the federal House does, voted favorably 13-7 on House Bill 133, which gets rid of the 1821 ban. And so it is now eligible for a full House vote when the regular session begins in the beginning of the year in 2026. So will they vote on it? I don't know. But we'll find out, I guess. There are a lot of lazy politicians in Florida that just kind of like, which is good, right? Inaction and gridlock are a benefit, but I'm cautiously optimistic about this one, specifically because Florida, we've been seeing just a lot of good things happening, like in the Florida legislature and, the executive offices in Florida. They're kind of like, we don't want to hurt you on this, right? We saw earlier them not appealing the open carry ban, which resulted in the elimination of, a very, none of these are long-standing in a constitutionally significant sense, but for a long time, open carry has been banned in Florida, and then that's just gone. So will this happen? It'd be pretty cool. That said, when we did get the 1821 ban, that was the first time there was a Florida gun law in like 40 years. So Florida legislature just doesn't have that much appetite for touching guns at all, which is usually good. And in this situation, could be bad. But hey, let's find out. Last up, guys. Whoa, look at him.
Whoa.
This guy, look at him.
It's a cart snipper. He just came from the Caribbean seizure.
I was about to say, this is your Haitian online shopper. It is I don't know what that is. It's a man with a Barrett in a shopping cart, and it says "cart sniped." Is this a new slang? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not aware.
Oh God. Okay, so I haven't got this one. I got the Thanksgiving one. Eat more pork. It's a cute one. He's got a little 1911 and a backwards American flag hat. But the December exclusive patch of the month from patriotpatch.co, the longest time supporter of the show, is a very legally distinct Italian plumber man with legally distinct orange and gray non-gun in a cart device. So yeah, this is a
legally distinct Santa's sleigh cart.
Yeah, this is really funny. I don't even know how you come up with that, but that's what you get when you join the Patch of the Month Club on Patriot Patch. Every month you'll get something cool like this, limited run patch, PVC, nice and shapely, and you get a sticker. It's $15, guys. Come on, really? That's it? Come on, it's like $1 with inflation. But yeah, go ahead, check out patriotpatch.co, longest time supporter of the show, and don't forget to use promotional code TWIG 10. TWIG 10. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you guys for bearing with us. And thank you for all of your support. It's been huge. We've been really excited to meet some of the, we got a lot of new supporters on the last episode. That was awesome. Really humbling. It really enables us to do more of the work that some of you seem to like. And some of you were interesting to talk to.
And the other ones of you were interesting to talk to.
But yeah, guys, thank you again so much. Don't forget to join the Patreon for either me or Ivan. Either one gets you access to our Discord. You can come chat and be bullied, and kind of see what's going on, what we're up to. Get it, whatever the hell it is. We don't do giveaways. We don't do any of the weird stuff that influencers that prey on children do.
Yeah, Femboy Fridays has now moved to Thursday.
But we do talk about guns and have a nice time together. So there we go, guys. Thanks again. Be sure to keep your eyes on FUD Blasters. We got new videos coming out. There's one that I'm really excited about where we show a weapon used for a specific purpose that has never been documented before.
A non-sporting purpose.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. As always, we will see you next time.